Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a manga that has been on my mind ever since I finished it, or rather finished what's available of it. We're talking about Killing Morph. Now, if you're familiar with the creator behind Pumpkin Night, you already know what kind of ride you're in for. Dark, disturbing, and definitely not for the faint of heart. Killing Morph positions itself firmly in the horror and thriller genres, with heavy doses of mystery, drama, tragedy, and some truly unsettling supernatural elements. And let me tell you, it delivers on that promise right from the get-go. In this review, I'm going to walk you through what Killing Morph is all about, what I absolutely loved, and where I felt it really stumbled. So let's get into it. The story of Killing Morph throws you headfirst into chaos. It opens with a brutal, broad daylight massacre on the busy streets of Ikebukuro. A masked murderer, later dubbed M, or the Morph, armed with two machetes, just goes on a rampage, hacking 10 victims apart. It's designed for maximum shock value, and it absolutely works. But here's the twist that hooked me. Amidst all this carnage, a young girl named Madoko Murasaki is terrifyingly spared. M passes right by her, leaving his chilling gaze burned into her mind. This sets up her entire psychological nightmare, and as she becomes haunted by visions of him, constantly questioning her own sanity. The manga really tries to immerse you in her fragmented reality. And for a while, it does a great job of making you wonder if she's losing it or if something truly supernatural is at play. And that supernatural element, it's bilocation. The morph can split himself into multiple bodies, initially thought to be two, but later revealed to be up to three. These bilocated forms share injuries. They can teleport, appear and disappear, and even manifest through the eyesight of others. This makes the morph an almost omnipresent, inescapable threat, which is just terrifying. His motivations are explicitly unknown, which only amplifies that sense of pure, unpredictable terror. It's a fantastic concept for a horror villain. Now, here's where we hit our first major snag. The manga spans 4 volumes and 36 chapters, concluding with a chapter that says end of part 1. But due to some kind of falling out between the author and the publishing company, a part 2 remains uncertain. This means the story is left notably unfinished, with so many plot threads just hanging. It's a huge bummer, and honestly, it really impacts the overall experience. You invest in this terrifying world only for it to just stop. Let's talk about the art, because Nokuto Koike's work is a defining feature of Killing Morph. It's consistently described as detailed and heavy art, and I have to agree, his drawing is incredibly effective, especially when depicting violence and gore. Reviewers have even compared his style to Hokazono's, which is high praise in the horror manga world. Max Koff even called it really good art. This manga does not shy away from graphic depictions. Sasha Veneman explicitly stated that the first volume is extremely bloody and brutal, with the rampage depicted in detail, body parts flying around, blood flowing in torrents, which is why it's got the 18+ recommendation. For fans of explicit horror, this is definitely a strength. It provides a visible impact you're looking for. And here's a detail that really stuck with me. The manga includes gruesome quotes from real-life serial killers before each chapter. That metatextual element adds such a chilling layer of realism, blurring the lines between fiction and actual depravity. It gave me goosebumps, and it really grounds the fantastical horror in something truly grim. However, while the detailed artwork is initially impactful, I found that the over-reliance and shock value without enough narrative or psychological depth to back it up eventually led to desensitization. As one comment noted, the gore is the norm and shock value becomes non-existent. What starts as disturbing can become mundane, or even just weird. rather than truly horrific. It's a fine line, and Killing Morph sometimes crosses it into grotesqueness, which can actually detract from the horror. Now, onto the characters, starting with the terrifying enigma himself, the Morph, M. He's this violent serial killer, instantly recognizable by his two machetes and that sack over his head. His bilocation ability is truly unique, allowing him to split up into three bodies that share injuries and can teleport. He's also physically formidable, shattering phone screens and blocking machete strikes with his bare hands. And disturbingly, he's pulled out all his teeth and burned away his face, making him feel less human and more like a pure monster. The biggest mystery is, who is this Morph really? And what is his connection to Madoka? His motivations are unknown, which makes him incredibly unpredictable and terrifying. He's less a character and more a force of nature, and an embodiment of senseless fear. Then we have Madoka Murasaki, our primary protagonist. She's a young girl traumatized by witnessing M's massacre, and she's constantly plagued by visions of him, questioning her own sanity. This struggle with her sanity is supposed to be a core psychological theme, drawing you into her deteriorating mental state. But, and this is a pretty big criticism, some readers felt her supposed psychosis was only really told, not shown. It made it feel out left field and random, which really undermines the psychological depth the manga aims for. It's hard to empathize with her internal turmoil when you're just told it's happening. There are even hints that Madoka herself might develop bilocation abilities, which would have been an incredibly fascinating arc. The victim becoming like the oppressor. But of course, that's left unexplored due to the series' premature end. Finally, there's Noriko, a character who interacts with the Morph and even manages to block one of his machete strikes. Her reveal in the story was frankly a little silly. There's a perceived plot hole regarding hospital identity checks and her access to confidential information about victims. It just felt like a logical inconsistency that pulled me out of the story. Beyond that, her character development felt unsatisfying. The idea of her snapping out of it almost instantly without much guilt despite being part of the deaths of dozens, maybe hundreds of people, just didn't land. The manga uses time skips to convey her transformation into a cold-hearted orchestrator, which is a classic tell, don't show problem. It felt like a missed opportunity for some truly disturbing psychological exploration. So let's quickly recap the good and the bad of Killing Morph. On the positive side, we have the premise, which is unique and captivating. Seriously, a serial killer with bilocation powers? That's a fresh take on horror, creating an immediate sense of inescapable dread and a compelling mystery. It's what drew me in. The unflinching graphic horror. Nokuto Koike's detailed and heavy art delivers on the promise of extreme violence and gore. For those who appreciate that level of visceral impact, it's definitely there. The unsettling atmosphere. The inclusion of real serial killer quotes before chapters is brilliant. Chilling touch that adds a layer of psychological discomfort. Engaging early on, despite its flaws, the initial volumes are genuinely compelling and generate incredible bad vibes and morbid curiosity. Now, for the weaknesses, and these are significant, the inconsistent pacing, over-reliance on shock. The manga often leans too heavily on shock value, which eventually loses its effect and makes the story feel directionless or just really weird. The repetitive panels don't help either. The plot holes and illogical elements. The Noriko situation is a prime example of that. But there are other moments where the narrative sacrifices logic for convenience, pulling you out of the immersion of the story. Told, not shown character development. Madoko's psychosis and Noriko's transformation are often stated rather than organically shown, which weakens their impact, which makes it hard to connect with their internal struggles. And then the abrupt unfinishing ending. This is for me the biggest flaw. Ending with end of part 1, but with no real prospect of a continuation due to author-publisher issues, leaves so many questions unanswered. It undermines much of the build-up and leaves the entire narrative feeling incomplete and unfulfilled. The Goodreads ratings for later volumes actually show a decline in satisfaction. So would I recommend Killing Morph? It's a mixed bag, truly. If you are a seasoned horror fan who craves extreme gore and unique supernatural concepts, and you don't mind a story that ends abruptly with many questions unanswered, then yes, give it a shot. The initial premise and the sheer brutality are genuinely captivating. However, if you're looking for a tightly plotted, psychologically deep narrative with a satisfying conclusion, you might find yourself very frustrated. It's a manga that had incredible potential, a truly terrifying villain, and some compelling ideas, but ultimately it was cut short before it could truly blossom. It leaves you with a visceral experience, but also a lingering sense of what if? That's my take on Killing Morph. Have you read it? What were your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss my next reviews. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.